This is a 40% Carden Extra 330. We're going to go over some of the basic improvements or assembly procedures that we used while making this. We'll start at the front of the fuselage. As you can see, the engine standoffs are glued fast to the firewall. That helps in assembly later on down the road. We use pins across the motor box, the front, the sides, and the bottom rather than screws. It is believed that these will do a better job of holding. The cowling design is a little bit different on this version airplane. We use the L-shaped plastic standoffs on top of the motor box rather than on the sides. This is to help facilitate a couple of things. One, as you can see, there's a stick added in this area here to help the box be stronger this way, left and right. When you do that, you would be losing your strength by cutting through that in this area here to put this standoff. So we've moved it from the side to the top. That does another thing for us. It allows the cowling. As you can see here, I've got a couple of small lightning holes, and we've added a small piece of wood to the inside so that we can reuse the ring that Dennis at Carden has supplied with the kit. So what we're going to do is you'll see that those become a nice little ramp for us. So when we're installing the cowling, we set it on there, slide it back, and the screw holes are lined up. The gravity is doing the work for us. We don't have to line it up ourselves anymore. We also changed the bottom cowling a little bit. What we've done is the L-shaped pieces here are going into the side of the motor boxes here and then on the other side. The purpose for this is rather than having the nut on the outside and the screw on the inside, where you can't get to it because we've used tuned exhaust or exhaust canisters, so there's a floor in here, we can't get to that screw. So what we have done is we put the T-nut on the inside down here, and we're going to put the screw in from outside the cowling in this direction. We've got a little guide block that we've made here. So when we put our Allen wrench in there, it slips right through, goes into the screw head, which will be here. The screw head will go into the hole here, and you just go ahead and screw it on down just like normal. That way you only need to have the hatch off. You don't have to take the cans out and whatever to get that cowling on and off of there. Another area of design change. This is a little dowel rod, 1/2 inch diameter dowel. It goes through all the way to the inside. We have a little piece of 32nd ply here to back that up. This is for the hatch hold on. There's 6 of these total. So what we're going to do here is this dowel goes through, is glued to the outside of the wood. It's butted up against this truss and this truss to give it some strength. It's glued onto this piece of 32nd ply, which is spreading the load out further. We've gone one step farther, and although you won't be able to see it with this picture, there's a little brass insert in this dowel. The little brass insert is recessed down into the hole, and it is through drilled for a 440 screw. What that allows us to do is that allows us to put our screw in. It's contacting metal. It's bottoming out on hardwood, between hardwood and metal. And when our canopy sits on here, we can tighten that screw as tight as we care to, and it's not going to crush anything. It's not going to crush any wood. It's not going to smash the covering or anything like that. And it's a smooth overall finish because the screw head will be flush. Another area of change, the wing tube and the tail tube are done the same way. On the plans, you glue this piece of light ply over top of the stringers that are running up and down, and then there's truss work in there as well. And then the wing tube is glued fast through the hole, through the outside of the skin. What we've done is we filled on the inside between these two trusses that run in here. We have filled that with a piece of balsa wood, 3/8 balsa, around this hole. And then we go ahead and we make this hole for the tube a little larger than it needs to be. We bevel it around the outside in that manner, and when we fit up the motor box, we get it to where the tube slides in and out of the hole smoothly with the sides in place. Then after everything is square and where we want it, we fill this area in with microballoons and resin. And that bond, that filling in, will complete the connection between the wing tube and the fuselage and give you a much better fit. It's much easier to do and works much better. There's no design change or no recommended changes on the inside. We're still trying to keep these connections somewhat tight here. On this particular airplane, the fuel tank mount, as you can see here, has been relocated, because if it was to be down on the floor, we would not be able to access our wing mount bolts very easily. So we've moved it up and behind that a little bit. A couple of small changes there. It's just, you have to do whatever you have to do to make that work. I've chosen to use the wing tube as my primary brace in the back, and then a little mount in the front with some light ply to sort of tie it all together to hold it steady in the front. Put a couple little attachments in the back here to keep the tank from coming off of the wing tube in negative maneuvers. As you can see, we've got a floor in this for our cans. This is for can exhaust. This is to help keep the airplane quieter, more attractive to the local people. They appreciate that. What that is, that's just a piece of 1/8 inch light ply. This area here, its purpose is purely for access to the can mount system. Although we won't be able to see the can mount system directly, that's what its purpose is. When we remove this, we can get to each can. I'll try to get a shot of the inside of that. There's our can mount system, a couple of half moons sitting on the floor. That's just a couple of pieces of 1/8 inch ply separated with a piece of 3/8 hard ply, cut in the radius a 1/4 inch bigger than the can. We're going to lay silicone heater hose available from Napa in there to act as a heat protector between the can and the wood, and we're going to have a tie wrap go around the whole schmo to hold it in place. The tie wrap also is protected by the same heater hose. The system we have found to work very well. I'm using the PIFA exhaust system, and you can see we've had to relieve this area and this area slightly to allow it to fit. PIFA's a little bit hard to get in there because the headers are not pre-bent very well. I've chosen to use anti-rotation pin for the wing. We've got a little half moon piece of hard ply in here to sort of help the loading get transferred into this stick and across the fuselage a little. This means that we're using this area here and in front with nylon 1/4 20 bolts in there. Nylon 1/4 20 bolts is what holds the wing on. Purpose of the wing bolts is purely at this point to keep the wing from sliding off of the wing tube. Purpose of the anti-rotation pin is to keep the wing in alignment. It also serves for good wing alignment when you're putting the airplane together. This is something that's a little difficult to do at this point to show you, but what happens is when you install the wing, or when you're installing the wings, you have to fit the wing up in this direction, and you've got to feed a wire through this hole for your servos. Well, if you're on asphalt, when you're sliding the wing on, the wing will want to tip down when you let go of the wing to start feeding the wire through the hole, which could damage the trailing edge of the wing. So with an anti-rotation pin, you can slide the wing on far enough to where the pin goes into the hole just slightly, that you can feed your wire through this hole, slide the wing on the rest of the way, and you're off and running. Really not a lot to talk about as far as changes or whatever in this area, other than maybe the back, which we'll go to the back to show you. It's a little easier than looking through here. I wanted to point out some of the seams on our way back. As you can see, there's a seam right there. There's another seam right here. What these are is this is where the sheeting comes together in order to make a long enough piece to make this fuselage. It's a very long fuselage. And all of the Carden kits are basically currently built this way, where you will not want to line these pieces up. You'll separate them a little bit. This is a piece of wood here, another piece of wood here, and a third piece here. You'll see that we have staggered the joints from there to here. This is to not have stresses in one point. You'll also notice these are put on right over top of one of our internal braces. We want this joint out here to be right over top of one of these sticks to help spread that load out. Once again, we don't want that joint right out in the middle of open air. It's very subject to failure at that point. Okay, one of the differences that we've got back here, and this is just personal preference, I don't think that it's really shown or recommended in any one specific way. This is how we've chosen to do it. This is the stab mount where the horizontal stab slides on the tube. We have our L bracket here for the leading edge of the stab to attach to for anti-rotation purposes and also retention purposes, but there's also a retention screw for the tube. Instead of having a small hole to feed your wires through for your servo extensions, we've put a very large hole here, and this will all be covered up by the horizontal stab once installed. But what we've got on the inside of that, see if I can get a picture, there's a little box. That little box all the way around, and then the front of that box is our tube. What the tube does is from the inside forward, that would be the front of the airplane where the receiver or receivers will be. You can slide your servo extension wires to that hole right there. They can't get out of that box. This eliminates the need for A, a hatch, and B, fumbling around trying to find a wire that fell down in the fuselage somewhere. Sometimes that can be very frustrating. So we've got this little box. Our wires will be laying right in this area here every time we take the stab on and off. They'll just be right there. They can't get out of that area. Pretty nifty little idea. We have chosen to go ahead and use a hatch for this aircraft. This is primarily so that we can use weight in the tail for specific maneuvers, freestyle events, or whatever. You may choose not to do that. You can put weight in the tube. However, there's problems with adding weight into the tube that you need to recognize. I'm not even sure what all of them are. But another design change. This is built up balsa. This aft part. The front part here is sheeted foam, just like the kit calls for. We have chosen to put a small filler block in this area and then a piece of cross in this area. On our hatch design, you'll see this is beveled here and this is beveled here. It's beveled away from the opening. The purpose of that is to allow easier installation of the hatch once it's in service. If these bulkheads or whatever would be perfectly straight up and down, it would be very difficult to get the hatch on and off. This is our little hatch design, pretty simple. Once again, it's made of built up balsa wood. It could be lightened quite a bit. We chose to leave this semi-rigid so that we can possibly add our weights right to the block rather than coming up with a mount system inside to add our weights to it. But essentially these things go all the way through. I'm not sure that's quite necessary, but they go all the way through. They're glued fast to the wood everywhere. And then these little brackets in the front here serve as something to keep it from going back and forth on the fuselage like that. Probably a little device, L-shaped device that goes up and into the fuselage and hooks onto this area here would be a little bit better. But this is a very strong design. It's not going to go anywhere, but to do over again, I think I would do it that way. And you see that this thing just goes right on here.